Well, good evening, my Facebook friendships. And I guess we're live now. It's saying that we're live, so I'm believing that. And the topic of our evening session tonight is gratitude to our guides. So in Tibetan Buddhist tradition, the tradition I'm a part of, in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, our guides, our teachers, are really the foundation of our path. So without our teachers who have upheld a tradition, authentic teachers who can trace their teaching and commitments all the way back to the teachings of the Buddha, through not just citing scripture and sutras and sources or doing sacred practices, but actually embodying the teachings, so that when you're actually with these beautiful teachers and beings, you feel the blessings of the Buddha, because they have the qualities within their own mind streams. Their heart minds are reflections of the Buddha's presence. Then we know the true value of the Dharma is only kept in this world through the true and authentic dedication of the teachers. So tonight, with gratitude to our guides, of course, we trace the guidance all the way back to Buddha, who is our main teacher, the teacher of our teachers. But we have to think about the teaching itself. What did the Buddha teach? He taught the Dharma. Dharma of peace, of love, of happiness, of solitary insight, but based on mutual connection. So the Buddha attained enlightenment, and other Buddhas and Bodhisattvas have attained enlightenment, but they cannot, as His Holiness the Dalai Lama, one of my teachers, likes to say, the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas cannot open our minds and put their enlightenment in. They are merely able to point the way, but we ourselves must go that way. But without teachers, without sacred guides, it would be very difficult. The sacred guidance from a book is not at all anything the same as being in the presence of an actual breathing, living, loving, awakened guide. Someone who's been purifying and cultivating their mind and their heart and their happiness for the benefit of themselves, for sure, but for the benefit of all mother beings, in order to lead and establish everybody into their highest state of happiness and peace, to be with a being who's been working on that as their main project. Well, it's quite sublime. So tonight, we want to take a few minutes at the beginning of the session now to just bring ourselves into this present moment awareness. I think we'll do a little meditation. So just get comfortable. Do a little bit of the steps of meditation, so we don't have to be sitting cross-legged. If you would like to be, you can be. But if you're sitting in a chair, just make sure your feet are flat on the ground. I'm going to come into a cross-legged position. But if you're sitting in a chair, just have your feet on the ground. And keep your back nice and straight. Let your chin come down a little bit so that it opens the back of your neck. Most important thing is keeping a straight posture as we're setting up the meditation. Chin comes down, eyes are half open, half closed, gazing down softly. Let the visual consciousness become very soft and dreamlike, but the inner consciousness, the inner watching or awareness is very sharp and clear. This isn't to get to sleep. This isn't to just do relaxation. We want relaxed, alert awareness. Tip of the tongue rests on the roof of the mouth, behind the palate, the fleshy part, and the teeth. You can put a little smile on your face just because it feels good. Let's take some deep breath in through the nose and follow the breath. Let it come in through the nose. Imagine it coming up over the top of the head, then down through the back, and kind of looping around underneath, and then to the diaphragm. And the diaphragm is about 4 fingers beneath the belly button, so that should fill up with air, like a balloon. You know, the diaphragm has space in it, and we want to fill that space with breath. And enjoy it. Breath is our lifeline. You know, we talk so much about food and our favorite food. Everyone's posting their food on Facebook and or their favorite drinks, but really without food we can live for up to 30 days if we have access to water, and even without water we can live maybe 2 days if we don't have food, but we have a little bit of water. We need at least water after 2 days or we'll perish, but without breath, after 5 minutes we'll perish. So breath is our lifeline to life. No one thinks about breath or talks about breath, but if you can breathe nice and smooth and open. In Tibetan Buddhism, we talk about 72,000 channels that move through the whole body. So there's a physical body, then there's an ethereal, energetic body. You can get those aligned, moving with breath. We also believe the mind moves on breath. So the mind is like breath. It's something we cannot see. Actually, mind is even more subtle because breath, we could say, there's some oxygen and there's some things that we can investigate, CO2. Mind is completely non-physical, luminous and radiant, but it's connected with breath, because if we don't have breath, we don't have consciousness. Even in our sleep, we still have breath, so consciousness is still active. That's why we dream. So in our meditation, we want alert, relaxed consciousness, focusing with breath. So breathing in through the nose. Breathing out through the nose. Sinking and settling. Let the lower part of the body, from the waist down, become very quiet, very settled, solid feeling, grounding. Let the upper part, from the waist up, from the dantian or the belly button, right below the belly button up, become very light and spacious, so that you expand beyond your sense of feeling hemmed in by the flesh, but that your mind transcends your physical form. If the lower part of your body is nice and grounded, use the breath to go beyond the sense of the body and the physical and expand out and connect with the sense of space. So that's why when we breathe in, we want everything to fill up in the physical body. The diaphragm is a little pouch that has space, and the lungs are pouches with space. We want to fill all that space with breath. Expand it, expand it. Open up. And as we breathe out, still extending out into space, but allow everything to sink and settle very peacefully in the body. Let's take a few more breaths here just to enjoy paying attention to breathing. So when we're breathing in, we're just aware of breathing in. There's nothing else to do, nothing else to think about. We can just remember breathing in means we have life. How wonderful it is. Just be with that. Breathing out, we can just let go of any thoughts, any concerns, any fears or anxieties. Just let them go on the out breath. Send them out into space. You don't need them. Just give them up. Let your heart open up to feeling a warm, joyful sensation. In Buddhism, we believe in karma, so we have these moments of being together like this using our human consciousness to connect because we did some very virtuous activities to be able to create this kind of a life form where we can have consciousness that reaches out to expand and connect with our most awakened being, our divine and sublime essence, which is just radiant awareness, being aware of being aware. So just breathing in, stay aware, being just breathing in. Thoughts come, let them come in, let them go out like clouds in the sky. Allow the mind to identify with space in the sky. It's not disturbed the way the sky and space is not disturbed by clouds. Clouds appear in the sky and they dissolve back into the sky. So thoughts appear in the mind, just let them dissolve back into the mind. Don't chase after them. Don't think them. Don't try to deny them. Don't try to stop them. Just allow them, but don't put any more energy into them. They come, they go. You're staying with breath, undisturbed. Just resting in awareness, at ease. And after we breathe out, just notice there's a natural resting, a natural pause that arises. So don't habitually breathe in and out. Just allow that pause after the out breath and just rest in that stillness. The pause is a natural expression of peaceful, calm breath. We're not holding the breath, we're just allowing the breath to find a natural rhythm, and we're just aware and watching. What is my rhythm like right now? And you may be surprised to find that it will slow down as we put our awareness to it. We're sipping the breath in and really enjoying it. You know, many people look forward to their favorite cocktail or sip of wine, but the breath is so much more delightful. It's free. We don't need anything. We have it with us all the time. We don't need money for it. We don't even need a glass. We don't need liquids. We just have breath. We can use it wherever we are. It's like a natural elixir. This is why the Buddha used the breath as an object of meditation so often when he was teaching. We always have it with us. We can always turn in and tune into it. But make sure your eyes don't close all the way. Keep them partially open, partially closed, because there is relaxation that arises. But this meditation is not for relaxation or for sleep. It's to hone our mind into relaxed awareness. Certainly, if you have problems with insomnia, you can use this breathing technique with the eyes closed and just stay focused on breath, and it will help you fall asleep. But in Buddhist meditation, that's the opposite direction we're going in. We're trying to wake up. So we don't want to close the eyes right now. We want a partial awareness of the room wherever we are, but we're not engaging with the room. We're just using a slight part of our consciousness to stay present to the room and the external reality, while we're really focused. 90% is focused just on the movement of breath in and out. 10% is just aware of the room that we're sitting in. So the object of this meditation is just breath, breathing in, aware of breathing in. Breathing out, aware of breathing out. After the out breath, a stillness that arises, just aware of resting. Sounds may interrupt your thoughts, may interrupt your breath, may interrupt. Even by saying, oh, this is wonderful, feels so good. Well, just let these things go. Come back to breath. The instruction is just simple awareness. Breathing in, aware of breathing in. Breathing out, aware of breathing out. Resting, aware of resting. Just keep it simple. Okay, let's come out of that little breath meditation and Tibetan Buddhism, we call that Shinei, or calm abiding. So we shared a little peace of mind together, and hopefully you feel some benefit. I know I do. So that's the point, is to just keep things simple and to come back to our breath. I think that was maybe 10 minutes. It wasn't very long, but we can find even shorter amounts of time. We can do 5 minutes. We can even do 2 minutes. The point is we relax, we take a break. We come back to breath and we find there's an incredible presence and stillness and peace of mind that's always there, if only we would remember to plug into it. And, in the wisdom that is life and the design of life, we all have breath, so we can all plug into this. This isn't even necessarily a Buddhist practice. Of course, the Buddha used this as his main practice in meditation because it is such an accessible human way to be able to teach. And we're so grateful to the Buddha for his teachings because he tried to keep them very accessible to all kinds of beings. He didn't discriminate. He took on male and female. He took on lowest caste, highest caste, kings and queens. He didn't believe in any of these categories. He knew they don't exist anywhere. These categories only exist in people's minds. And yet breath is universal. Everything that lives has breath. Isn't that wonderful? That unites us. That's life. Life is that which has consciousness, needs interconnection to all other parts of life around it. So every form of life in the ocean and the skies, on the earth, we're all breathing. We're breathing differently. Fish have a different system to breathe. The mammals in the ocean have a different system of breathing, but everyone's breathing. And so this shows us how deeply we are interdependent. We need the nature that creates our air for us. We don't have oxygen by ourselves. Our body doesn't create oxygen. We need that from the green plants that create an atmosphere of oxygen. There's oxygen in the air, O2. There's oxygen in water, H2O. The fish are breathing it too. The mammals in the sea, the whales and the dolphins have to come up to breathe from the depths. They come up and take breath. Everybody's breathing. Everybody's alive. How wonderful. We take it for granted. We shouldn't. That's why we need teachers to remind us what a precious, precious thing it is to be alive, to be human. Has nothing to do with our skin tone, has nothing to do with the money that we have or don't have in our pocket, has nothing to do with our age, with our gender, with who we love, with what we believe in. It's much more basic than that. It just has to do with being alive and being aware that we're alive. What a preciousness there is in that. So our teachers help remind us that they themselves recognize that life is much more than superficial concerns of economics, of taking photos of what kind of food we're eating at whatever moment or what kind of beverage we're drinking. It's much more than what kind of clothes we're wearing or car we're driving. It's much more about being alive, being aware of having life. Now, many great spiritual leaders, including Gandhiji here in India, gave up all the trappings of the societal ideas of what it is to be important and what it is to use human life, as many people try to try to gain some kind of status. Gandhiji was educated abroad in England and taught to wear fancy suits as a lawyer. But it was through difficulty that he came to recognize the spiritual quest was much more satisfying than the material quest. That's a very similar theme to the life of the Buddha. Siddhartha, Prince Siddhartha, was born as a royal in a caste of warriors, but his father was a king. And so his expectation was his son would become a king. So he was Prince Siddhartha. He had a lot of material benefits, but even from a young age, he wasn't really that interested in those trappings. He played his part well, but one of his first meditations as a young boy was under an apple tree during the harvest festival, when he fell and he slipped into a very deep sense of meditation during these harvest activities. And it would be that moment that he'd remember years later as he was questing for enlightenment that kept things very simple for him. He discovered it wouldn't be good to be too extreme in either direction, not too much wealth and attachment to material life, and not too much asceticism and denial of basic needs. But he would find what he would call his middle way approach. Gandhiji would also come to his great insights on ahimsa, nonviolence, but resistance using principles that would use also a middle way approach. He pushed the limits with his fasting in order to get systems to change. He threatened to go to extremes, yet he never crossed over. There's a wisdom that our teachers are trying to point to of finding the middle way. His Holiness the Dalai Lama, in his great proposal as well to China to try to find a middle way solution. Allow Tibet to become again part of China without being named as an independent country, but give us some religious freedoms. Let us find a middle way solution where we can both find an acceptable answer. This 21st century is asking us to find the middle way, each of us. We cannot throw out the findings of science. We need to appreciate that science has many great answers to help improve the situation on the planet, not just for humanity, but for life and the ecology and the environment. But science alone will never be enough. We have to also appreciate the sacredness of spiritual pursuits to provide an even deeper aspect and dimension of human meaning and exploration and deep interconnection to a very sacred mystery. So a middle way, merging of the science and the spirit. And so our teachers, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, of course, one of my main teachers now, since he gave me this ordination and blessed entry into the life as a female monastic, and my root teacher, His Eminence Kensor Rinpoche Lobsang Seten, who's just delightful. He's pictured on my Facebook page with his gorgeous smile. He's almost always looking like that. You know, where would I be without him? I said that the other day to one of my nun sisters here at the nunnery. I said, that teacher, my root Lama, my Sawai Lama, he really saved my life. And I mean that. Because although I had a great education in the United States, I had loving parents. Both of them were teachers. They were my earliest teachers, of course, as all of our parents often are. But also, each of my parents was a teacher. My mother was an elementary teacher, and my father was a high school teacher of language arts. He had a master's degree. They were both the first people in their families who attended the state teachers college. And very much valued education, but they were both also quite interested in beyond academic teaching and in teachings of the spirit. So I had books on my shelf growing up that they were interested, like Gandhiji's biography, uh, the story of the Von Trapp family singers, Maria Von Trapp, because The Sound of Music, some of you may know that movie and that story of a family in Austria that fled from the Nazi occupation. It's a true story, and later were given refuge in the United States and actually lived in the state north of where I grew up. And my uncle actually worked for them at their they had a big lodge. And still, The Sound of Music tells a story about resisting oppression and following freedom through music. And so had life stories like that of Maria Von Trapp. And what other stories? Some Rumi and Hafiz, some stories from the Sufi tradition. My mother and her Italian family were very Christian, Catholic. Her mother was from Italy, Catholic, so we had the Bible and we had life stories and parables for children about Jesus's teachings. We had stories of Plato and Socrates. I remember reading them when I was about 11 or 12. So I had access, to really wonderful teachers because my parents were teachers and they had these kind of things in their library. So our teachers are so precious on many levels. So having been exposed to Jesus as a teacher when I was young, because I was raised partly as a Christian in my young age, my family was not Buddhist, and then my father's family was Native American and connected to the Lakota Blackfoot Sioux. And so we were raised also with a deep appreciation for the natural world. And I remember my father taking us out camping, and he I guess it's called converted to Christianity so that he could marry my mother, because the Catholic Church would not allow you to marry someone if you weren't a Catholic. So, but in his own way, he would take us out into nature and we'd be camping and he'd open his arms and say, "This is the great cathedral. This is the real cathedral," meaning the universe. So his interests were in transcendental poets and people like E. Cummings and Henry David Thoreau and the Transcendentalist movement, the Beat poets. My father was also a poet, published poet, so he had those kind of teachers. So all these kind of teachers were highly influential in my own journey. And I'm sure right now you can think of some of your teachers from your childhood and your background and your culture who had great influences on you and your learning. But for my own sacred path, it wasn't until I really met this Tibetan Lama about 20 years ago when I was, I guess 19 years ago. I was 34. And I had never met someone in person who was so beautiful. His eyes sparkled. His heart was full of love. It was no doubt about it. And I just had the feeling I want to know what he knows, because he knows something good. And he didn't have much English at the time, but it didn't matter. I just remember, I think the second time I met him, we met the first time because I saw a picture of him in the newspaper in Maine. And it said something like a Dharma talk was going to be held at the Maine College of Art. And I thought, I want to go and see what this nice smiling man has to say, the smiling monk. And I had met a Tibetan monk when I lived in Hawaii on the Big Island. I had stayed at a Buddhist temple in the southern part of the island, and His Holiness the Dalai Lama had just been there. This was way back in like the year 2000. And I hadn't known about this temple, and friends of mine in Hawaii just said they're kind of healers, and they said, "Oh, you really should go and stay at this temple down in the south part of the island. You'll like it." So I did, and they were right. I really liked it. And there had been one monk who stayed behind from this group of monks that had been visiting there with His Holiness, who was a chant master from Tibet. So I had never heard Tibetan chanting. And this monk was giving meditation every morning. So I'd get up early and go into the temple and after he finished his morning puja, his morning ritual, we'd sit and have tea and we'd chat. So he was really the first Tibetan monk that I met, and I'm sorry I don't remember his name, but it really doesn't matter because he was just such a beautiful, beautiful brother. And he told me one day you'll get to India. And I think actually I really even remember now getting a postcard from there that I think might be Sherabling that's nearby from here. I saw this beautiful temple. I still have the postcard in a journal, and I wrote, wow, look at India. It seems amazing. I had never been to India. I hope I get there one day. Well, clearly I've arrived. So, what we put out in our minds, when we put that out, it's important because we will meet those guides. I'm sure of that. When we have this strong wish to meet our teachers and our guides, we will meet. There's no doubt about it. So this was back in 2000 that happened. So then in 2002, I moved back from Hawaii to the mainland of the US to New England, where I'm originally from, Massachusetts, but I moved back to Maine, where I had studied in university. And within the first month of moving to Maine, I saw this picture in the newspaper of this beautiful little monk's face and thought, yeah, I want to go and hear his talk. And I got to his talk. It didn't end up being that much about Dharma, but he talked about a school he had started in India. And I thought, wow, that's amazing. I'd love to go volunteer at that school sometime. I'd been teaching school in Hawaii, and when 9/11 happened, I taught all the 86th graders that I was teaching social studies to, I taught them how to meditate. And then I had this wish, well, I'd like to teach meditation. I'd like to teach it in a way that could benefit people without it needing to be a religious thing. This was like really just as the mindfulness movement was starting to pick up in the US back in 2000. And so I started my master's degree in 2003 to study meditation and mindfulness and to think about how to take it from its traditional spiritual context and transfer it into more secular approach. But as it happened in the fall of 2003, after having met this Lama at a Dharma talk at the Maine College of Art in 2002, I did go to a weekend teaching with him and met him in 2002. After that, at that same time period, he showed up as a guest teacher in my world religions class, and we shared a 5-hour round trip car ride where he was going up to the northern campus to talk. So he slid into the back seat of the car next to me, and I looked at him and I said, I'm sure you don't remember meeting me last year, but I remember meeting you. Certainly I did. And he laughed and smiled, and I thought, holy moly, this is really good karma. So I was a little bit shy. We sat in the back seat together. My friend was driving up, and our professor had to sit in the front seat. He had hurt his leg, and then that's why they needed to catch a ride with us. So this monk is sitting in the back seat next to me, and I think, well, geez, I've got to ask him a good question. Now I've got really time directly to ask him. So it popped into my mind, and I turned and looked at him, and I just said, how do you know if you've met your spiritual teacher? And I thought, where is this question coming from? But it came from my heart, so I just asked it. He looked at me in his broken English. He said, oh, very good question. Then he giggled a little. He said, well, I don't know. I cannot say for every tradition, but in our tradition, very important, students should find the teacher. Good teacher, never looking for the student. Good teacher practicing, doing their practice, staying quiet, staying peaceful, not trying to find students, not trying to make a big name. I thought that sounds good, humble, down to earth. So then he says, and in our tradition, in our sacred texts, it says there are ways to know if you found a teacher. There are some tests, but the student should check and follow and see if the teacher has the qualities. And the student should check carefully, maybe even up to 12 years. So he says this to me, and I'm about 34 at the time, maybe 35. And I'm thinking, holy moly, again, 12 years, by the time that time I'm going to be 47 or 48. That's pretty old, as one thinks of age when they're 35. And I didn't say it, I just had the thought. And in a minute, he looks right at me and he says, well, in your case, take at least 7 or 8 years. And I had chills all the way up the back of my neck. And I thought, if he's saying that to me, maybe I've just met my teacher. I wasn't even thinking I'm looking for a teacher really, but somehow I kind of knew was looking for a teacher. I knew at least throughout my studies I was looking who's in a contemporary way accessible as a great spiritual guide. So when he said that, I thought internally, he just totally plucked that out of my mind and told me, at least for 7 or 8 years, I should probably check out to see if he has qualities. He didn't say it exactly like that, but that was the message I got. So I thought, okay, fair enough. What else am I going to be doing? Like I don't have time to do that. Of course I can make time for that. He's not saying become a Buddhist. He's not saying become my student, become my disciple. He's not even saying take vows in the Buddha. He's just saying, if you like my teachings, because I told him we had met the year before and that I had gone to a day-long teaching with him, and we had shared at lunchtime during that one day the earlier year. I had asked him, everyone was very quiet and being very formal, and I thought, geez, this guy's really fun. I'm going to just ask him some questions because he's right there. I asked him, how do you teach humility to your students at your school in India? Because my students in Hawaii, after 9/11, and to help them settle themselves down throughout the school year, I taught them breath meditation. But what do you do? He said, well, humility is not usually a problem for our students, but if they're really quite naughty, we pull them by the ear out of the classroom and then we talk to them. And I said to him, yeah, but we can't touch them, so we're using meditation. He said, yes, it's a good alternative, but most unfortunate. Sometimes they need to be pulled by the ear. So he thought using meditation with his school children was a good idea. So I said to him, I really liked your teaching last year, and are you using meditation at your school? And he said, no, but it's a good idea, and maybe one day you'll come and teach them. And I was shocked. I thought, yeah, I would love to come to India. And when I saw that you talk about your school, I had the wish that I one day would come to India. And I also thought maybe one day I could volunteer at your school. He said, oh, yes, you can, with this big smile. Here I am, I'm 34, 35, doing my master's degree, a totally broke graduate student. But I'll tell you what, in 2 years I was there. Within 2 years I was at his school volunteering. I was supposed to go the following year and I got sick and I had to have a surgery, so I couldn't go in 2004. But it was a blessing in a way in disguise, because when I went back to graduate school, one of my teachers said, oh, we heard that this summer you couldn't go to India, but you're a great candidate. There's a scholarship you can apply for, a grant, and it might fund your whole trip. And guess what? Yes, it did. So that again was a teacher in my grad program that helped me out that way. So, and I was at a Christian seminary, and I wasn't really Buddhist. I wasn't calling myself a Buddhist, but everyone, I guess, felt that I had a Buddhist vibe, because if there were questions about Buddhism, everyone would say, oh, go ask Lisa, she's Buddhist. It was my lay name before I became a nun. So I would just say, well, I don't know if I know the answer. And I wouldn't say, yes, I'm a Buddhist, or no, I'm a Buddhist, not a Buddhist. I just say, okay, if you have a question, I'll see if I can answer it. Because I had started to study when this teacher was coming to Maine, I'd started to follow him as a teacher and feel like, great, he said, you don't have to be a Buddhist. You can follow the teachings, and if you benefit from them, that's the important thing. It's not important to be a Buddhist, but if you become happier, you feel healthier, you feel lighter, you feel more alive, then we're happy that you're benefiting. So, teachers can be animals, teachers can be friends, they can be our family, they can be formal teachers. But in Buddhism, we really value teachers as formal teachers, especially in Tibetan Buddhism, because teachings of the Buddha, especially in Tibetan Buddhism, can be traced all the way back to the original teacher of the teachings, which is the Buddha. So the Dharma that we follow stays authentic, stays pure, is held in a very sacred vessel by teachers. The teachers themselves are the sacred vessel. The teachings are the sacred contents. So in order that the teachings stay pure, authentic, not corruptible, they need to be held in a very pure, authentic, incorruptible vessel. So this is why teachers are so, so important, that they are very authentic, and not say that the Buddha Dharma is their teachings, but it is the teaching of the authentic teacher, the Lord Buddha himself, and that the Dharma is the Buddha's Dharma, and that has been kept alive through the dedication of pure teachers, of the fourfold Sangha. In Buddhism, we say of the monastics, so the ordained women, female practitioners like myself, the ordained male practitioners called monks. Female practitioners are called sunmas. It means female monastic of grace. This is a feminine word, sunma. And the males are called monks. And by the lay people, there are lay women and lay men. So those are the people who are just householders. They work, they have families, they have responsibilities in the world, but they follow the teachings of the Buddha, but they've not renounced the whole worldly life because they're still involved in doing and living a life that entails working in that bigger outside world, whereas monastics tend to stay very committed to living in a nunnery or a monastery. We may travel and give teachings. We stay for some time, maybe in people's homes or in a hotel or at a conference. But when we return, we're living in a monastic community or in a Dharma center with other monastics. So the Buddha established, he's the one who called and created the third jewel, the fourfold Sangha. So the lay men, the lay women, the female practitioners, nuns, sunmas, and the male practitioners, monks, the male monastics. Fourfold Sangha are like pillars that uphold the Dharma. So we need teachers then who are dedicated to sharing the Dharma, who are looking to maintain the Sangha of practitioners, the community of practitioners. And we need teachers, maybe sometimes for some of us who weren't born into Buddhist families, we need to have had good teachers in our earlier life, our parents, our academic teachers. I'm sure you can think of favorite teachers you had in grade school or in university, who give us curiosity to be able to read, to be able to write, to be able to learn. Without those things in the spiritual tradition and path, we just can't get too far, because we have to then follow based on blind faith. We need capacity in Buddhism to investigate the teachings of the Buddha. The message, one of the first messages that weekend I went to my teacher's first teachings in Maine, written on the whiteboard said, it was a quote from the Buddha that said, "Believe nothing, no matter who has said it, even if I myself have said it, unless it accords, unless it makes sense to your own knowing. If it doesn't make sense to your own intelligence, leave it alone." And then it was end quote, and then signed Buddha. So I thought a teacher who can give that instruction to their students totally must have full faith and confidence in their students' capacities. And as I studied more and more of the Buddhist teachings, indeed he did. He taught to all different ranges of students. He taught to all different classes. He transcended all different views of class, gender. He knew exactly the right things to say to reach exactly the right minds of the beings who were interested in what he had to share. So for some, he taught the Four Noble Truths, just teaching basic behavior, how to live a life to get free of suffering, to understand that there's a way out of suffering, how to follow the Eightfold Path. To others, he taught higher philosophy, the sutras, what to understand from the Heart Sutra, how to read. You had to be able to read the lines of 8,000 verses, the 25,000 verses, the 100,000 verses. Of course, these were written down after his lifetime, but he taught these deeper ways of thinking about reality to those minds who could use philosophy, who could follow that kind of inquiry. And then he taught tantric teachings, very mysterious, deep, profoundly esoteric but also very philosophical teachings to minds that could open to that level of instruction. But through his teachings, he had to know that there were all kinds of diverse learning styles, and he didn't want to leave anybody out of his teachings. So he taught to those various levels. Of course, in Mahayana Buddhism, we follow that path of also thinking through the bodhisattva activity of trying to get our own practice to a level so that we might then be able to become true vessels, true embodiments of the Buddha's teachings in order to benefit all mother sentient beings. So my teacher always teaches we never leave anyone outside of our love. We're not biased based on politics, based on nationality, based on religions, based on gender, nothing. Not based on past behavior. Even murderers, thieves, any kind of abusers, they can always come to Buddhism and find reception, compassion, welcoming, rejoicing. They want to turn away from those old behaviors. They want to find something new. A true teacher always welcomes a very willing student. So we don't even discriminate based on those kinds of behaviors. And we have teachings where the Buddha himself demonstrated being that kind of a teacher. There's one teaching of Angulimala, a practitioner who was practicing very black magic back in the time of the Buddha. He was told by his sorcerer that if he would cut off the thumbs of 100 people and wear them as a necklace around his neck, that he would gain power over anything in the world. And he needed one more thumb for his 100th thumb, and decided he was approaching the Buddha as a monk and thought, I'm going to take that monk's life and take his thumb and wear it, and then I'll have completed my tasks. But the Buddha, of course, had clear-seeing mind and knew that was the intention of Angulimala. And as Angulimala came and approached him, most people would shriek and try to hide in terror. The Buddha just stayed in the road and let this creature approach him, wearing all these horrific thumbs around his neck as a necklace. Buddha had heard of Angulimala and looked at him without any fear. And then Angulimala thought, maybe this is the one I've heard about, called the Buddha. They had an exchange, and through that exchange, the Buddha was able to turn Angulimala's mind away from this wrong view, this wrong path, and put him on the right path of loving kindness, infinite compassion, sorrowless bliss, and equanimity, treating all beings with nonviolence. So we have these kinds of stories within Buddhism of how the Buddha used his teachings, his view, his infinite universal loving kindness, compassion, and wisdom to tame and help minds that were completely covered with ignorance, covered with violence, covered with selfish desire, to transform into awakened awareness. Angulimala later became a follower of the Buddha and an ordained disciple. So these are the kinds of inspirational teachings that we find from our teachers. We know that we can trust them. They've been around for 2,600 years. They've led others to enlightenment and to awakening. We can feel confident by seeing someone like His Holiness, the great 14th Dalai Lama, who embodies these teachings so beautifully, who presents them, that they work, that they're still relevant in the world today, that they can be applied in a secular way. He's a Nobel Peace Prize winner, not because of any great religious thing he did, but only because he was able to continually and consistently call for a nonviolent resolution to the situation of Tibet with China. So we have modern examples of teachers who are still able to bring forth these qualities of the Buddha through carrying the authentic Dharma. How wonderful it is. How wonderful it is. How wonderful it is. So we're very lucky that we're alive in this day and age, even though we have challenges, as every living creature in every day and age always will have. That's the nature of this world system. There will always be challenges, but we have the Dharma as our teaching. We have a Buddha as our teacher who's no longer here, but we have the Sangha, the disciples and the community of followers. These three jewels we are able to take refuge in. We can have safety and protection in these teachings because the teacher is authentic and because there is a living community that's still upholding purely and selflessly, only for the sake of benefiting self and others, these sacred traditions. So, whomever your teachers are, please give them great gratitude. Give them your heartfelt appreciation. I do for my teacher so much for his great kindness. His great kindness, his amazing sense of humor, his authentic joy, his deep wisdom, his blessings for all beings, all mother beings, and for sharing his Dharma that he's come to embody and embrace, and in my mind and heart, really presents as a living Buddha, as well as the most holy Tenzin, Jetsuma Tenzin Palmola, who is full of loving kindness, full of all the qualities. His Holiness the Great 14th Incomparable Dalai Lama. So many are here with us today, only out of their kindness to share the Dharma. How wonderful it is. How wonderful it is. How wonderful it is. May all authentic teachings everywhere be upheld by authentic teachers everywhere, selflessly, freely sharing the beauty of Dharma, the profoundness of its peaceful message, the profundity of its true transformations, the loving kindness infinitely for all mother beings, with equanimity, with sorrowless bliss, and endless compassion. May we all benefit. Thank you for listening to this Facebook Live. I hope it's brought you some happiness, some peace of mind, some joy. I feel very close with you that you're watching, whomever you may be. I wish for you, my brothers and sisters, great happiness, great peace of mind, total strength and wisdom, confidence in your own capacity to embrace all that is positive, that is good, that is yes, that is alive, that is awake and aware, and to keep practicing. May we all attain Buddhahood for the benefit of every sentient being. Be well and have a great evening. Till next time.